So we touched on this piece, but just reiterating during the Q&A portion, please line up by the microphone so that we can hear you. And then we want to get to as many questions as possible, so please consider whether your question has already been asked by another community member. So again, we can get to as many of the questions in the room as possible. Safety is Edison's #1 priority, and we start every one of our meetings with a safety moment. So to kick us off, we really want to invite Chief Corbani of Los Angeles County Fire Department to lead us in a safety moment around the region, discussing the fire conditions that we face each year. Chief Corbani?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, of course you're welcome. I'm actually going to turn my back to you so that I can face the crowd.
No problem.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. Everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. I have a tendency to speak loud, so if it's too much, let me know and I'll try to turn it down. My name is J.C. Gorbani. I'm the Assistant Fire Chief for LA County Fire Department, serving not only the area of Acton, but all the way up through the Antelope Valley to the Kern County border and over to the San Bernardino County border. That's about 24, 25 fire stations that serve this area, plus a few call stations here and there. They asked tonight that I come just to bring everyone up to date on the current fire danger and what we're looking at. I know, having worked in and around these communities a long time, you're very well the danger we face, but just for some perspective, we were in our first red flag for this fire season last week. I don't know if you were aware of that or not, based on temperatures, based on low RH, based on no overnight recoveries. I think the Hawk fire happening 2 weeks ago is a great reminder of what we deal with here in this high country. Hawk fire went from 5 acres to 300 acres in a matter of 2 hours. And fortunately or unfortunately for us, because we were also working at the same time, the King fire over in North. Is that better? Okay, is this thing on? Is this thing on? Is that better for everybody? All right. Do you want to go way back to the beginning, or are we going? Okay. And so, because of the robust response from our department that LA County always brings, in addition to the cooperation we have with CAL FIRE, we had a lot of resources already because of the King fire that was occurring over in Gorman. We brought them over here, and that constituted fixed wing, rotary wing, and then all of the stuff that LA County brings. Rotary wing, crews, dozers, and your frontline fire department folks on engines, trucks, and the patrols that you've seen. We have not had appreciable precipitation in quite some time. I know there was some rain with the thunderstorms, but it's so light, it doesn't really do enough to get moisture back to the fuel. And so the way we look at that is there are a few things that will move fire across the terrain. And that's the fuels, the grass, the sage, all the brush that we love out here, living out here, the hills and foothills. And then as we go up those foothills, the fuels get heavier. So what drives fire across the landscape is the fuels, the terrain, and then wind. We're starting to get that time of year, we're gonna get winds, and as we get later into October, we know we're gonna get Santa Ana conditions. So we are where we normally are this time of year. Things are dry, we're starting to see increased heat. And so the call that we have for defensible space that you all do a great job on, the brush inspections that you've seen LA County do, all of those home hardening things are meant to give us an opportunity to provide defense for your homes and your businesses. So we see 80 to 90 degree weather for the next 2 weeks. We don't see any continued opportunity for rain. So we're going to remain pretty at a high fire danger for this area, all the way up to Kern. And then I would also say, keep in mind that all the way down to actually, we're there now in Crown Valley. I normally measure things at Red Rover Mine down in Crown Valley, but we're all in that very high fire severity zone, especially as we look forward to the new maps coming from CAL FIRE. So we are prepared. We're here to handle what we need to handle for you, but also I want you to know that if you have any questions or needs from the fire department, you should not hesitate to reach out. We are here for you. Are there any questions for me? Yes, ma'am.
Our community is faced with several battery energy storage projects that utilize lithium-ion technology.
Yes.
The fire department has been very supportive of these projects, and we have a problem with that. And I wondered what you've done for the department to train and be prepared for an event should one occur. I believe hazmat would be they would roll on the incident. Would be I know 80s would probably report as the first in, but we have a huge project that's going through approval right now. Another one that's gone through approval and we're fighting in court. But do you believe that these projects belong in the east part of Acton, in the very high fire hazardous area zone, where it's windy and funnels over there? It's over there by the Vincent Hill area and by the substation, that whole area. Do you believe that that battery technology belongs in that location?
Not our department's or my job to have an opinion, as long as the businesses are able to follow the universal fire code and the building code. And the code that is required for those buildings to go in is pretty strict. Our job is to be able to mitigate and manage when there's problems that come up. We are aware, to your earlier question about training, since the advent of lithium ion, it really started coming to our awareness from the East Coast. You know what? We realized the loss of life in the beginning of the advent. We've done continuous ongoing awareness training and just preparation for lithium ion issues. Okay, sir.
So in other words, you're having training to the fire department about taking care of these iron batteries because you can't put water on them to put the fire out. So hopefully you will get a handle on that.
That's correct. We are primarily on risk management and risk assessment. So if the worst thing we can do is put water on the fire, and the fire is not threatening the home, is not threatening the hillside, is not threatening any life, we will do what we can to contain the fire, not let it extend to anywhere else, and keep it in control. Hazmat would absolutely be part of the response. We also have the health hazmat part of our department, which deals with cleanup and regulation. They would be involved. And then everything our department does on large-scale incidents, we work with multiple cooperators and bring in the necessary entities to help us mitigate the issue.
Yes, sir.
I'm kind of surprised that you don't have an opinion on this, considering you oversee 25 fire stations and the men that service those fire stations. They're under your responsibility. You should have an opinion how to take care of them and their needs. So if a fire starts there and roars, so you can lose your men and your stations, and we can lose our town. So I'm really surprised you don't have an opinion.
Yes, sir. So my opinion is, and I'm sorry, I'm having problems controlling the tone of my voice. My opinion is based on keeping the people that I serve and protect safe. Very close second to that is protecting the people that I'm in charge of supervising. And to that end, we do train, we are aware, and my opinion is to get them the best training and awareness to keep them safe and to protect property and life when those are issues that are out there. There are a lot, I wouldn't say a lot, there are businesses we've had before that are reporting to us from the community that are problematic, that are not favorable. Our job as the department is to provide protection. We can't necessarily stop those businesses. That's for other agencies. All we can do is hold them to the universal or the LA County Fire Code. But my opinion is based on providing safety to you and the people that I am sworn to supervise.
Your silence is approval.
Okay, I understand that, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, those fires, chemical fires, you cannot stop them. You can only protect areas.
Correct.
Adding the water to that, they'll evaporate first of all in the air before it reaches the fire. And number two, you will create hydrofluoric acid, which will hurt not only us and our animals and but your people. They're breathing a burning chemical formula here that form in this hot and humid area. I mean, when the water is coming up. So I don't see how you can even come near that. And then what happens is you'll stop that will happen, the substation will get on fire, the 14 will get on fire, and I don't know how you can be so kind of, but so cool about that. It's not something that you can get caught. You need to fight for your people and for us. And you have to put your foot down, not to put this this project here. It should be in Antelope Valley, but for economic issues, they wanted to be here. And then we have no lines to LA, you have no 14, the 14 will be completely closed. The area after the fire won't be able to inhabit anybody for maybe for years because of the contaminant of the ground and water. So essentially, it's going to be like a nuclear explosion right here. So you have to put your foot down and fight for that.
You can tell our residents are very passionate about this. Well, so we're going to let you take it back to PSP. So there's a question we derailed.
I just want to, one thing about this town, national average of people owning their home is 64.5%. This town, 93.5% own their home, whether it's owned outright or has a mortgage. That's way more than national average. So when you consider the runoff, when you do, if this was to happen, to do a risk assessment, you have to consider they have well water, the majority of people, their animals, everything. How are you going to get water to them afterwards? You know, because they can't use it.
I understand.
And how many people have insurance? How many have CAL FIRE or CAL FIRE plan?
Yeah.
So just things really to consider when it comes to this town.
I understand. Yep.
I have a question about the fire season. When you guys do doing control permits and prepare for it, if not, why would you not do?
So the time for prescription of burning is very driven by weather and topographical features. And right now, this part of the season may not be the best time to start active fire. Our department constantly pursues the ability to put live fire to control large areas of land, but as we get deeper into August, September, it may not be the appropriate time. So what we do is we have a fuel management program in our department, and next year coming out of spring, they'll start looking at working with local cities and developing like what we call prescribed burns to manage the fuel. But this time of year would not be the right conditions to be doing that. And that's why your following notice that there was one coming particularly due to red flag. And the week prior, I think we had about a week's notice when there was discussion from the weather service about red flag conditions coming up here.
Do you have any cards you can leave behind?
I'm sorry, say again?
Cards you can leave behind?
I do not. Actually, I'm pretty new to the role, but I have an electronic card on my phone that I can happily share with you when I leave.
Okay.
And I would offer that to everyone here because I am here for you and I am available to you. Anyone else? Thanks for the opportunity to be here with you guys tonight. Sir?
Real quick, just for you personally, if a fire was starting around your home, would you rather have access to your well water and power to use it or not? I mean,
Yeah, I understand the point you're making. The answer is yes, of course. But I think you need to hear out the Edison folks. There's a lot of very solid reasons for them doing what they do based on what we've learned. But the answer, of course, is yes, sir.
same with that.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Can you please add Edison to your inspection area? Because they don't seem to want to clear their brush on their property.
Okay, I will have to look into that. They may not fall into some of our area of responsibility if they're on easements and stuff like that, but I can definitely look into it, particularly if you have specific spots of
On the
concern.
substation.
Okay, yeah, and I would be interested to see if they don't do their clearing. Normally with our cooperators and utilities, they're actually really good about abiding by those things, so let's make sure we talk about that so I can
I've
take a
had
look.
lots of complaints from
Okay.
residents that they haven't been clearing their area, and yet they're getting penalized on their insurance and everything else, and Edison doesn't clear their land, so.
Yeah, okay,
If you guys could add inspection, give them a reminder.
okay. Yeah, I have to find out because, as you guys know as well as I do up here, we have a mix of federal land, state land, and then local LA County land. So sometimes the way that works out depends on who's responsible. But I'm more than happy to look into that. The last thing I would say to everyone, when we get our next round of heat, try to remember about staying hydrated, staying cool, and limiting those outdoor activities that tend to cause us fire starts, like a brush hog, catching a rock, welding projects, some other things that maybe we ought not to do in the middle of the heat. And again, Jason Corbani, I will be here for the whole time. You want to get my electronic card when we're done, I'm always here for it. Was there anything else that I could offer for you?
No, a big thank you, Chief Corbani. We appreciate all you're doing for the community and your partnership. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm happy to serve.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and jump in. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great, fantastic. So a big thank you before we jump in. I just wanted to also thank High Desert Middle School for providing the facilities used today. We're here this evening to talk about public safety power shutoffs, PSPS for short, and other wild safety efforts that impact your community. I did just want to start off by frankly saying I'm very sorry for the impact that your community has had. Losing power for any amount of time is incredibly difficult. And Acton has been through a lot of challenges this past year, in particular related to public safety power shutoffs. We understand it's frustrating and inconvenient. We've heard the frustrations, several instances of frustration. At the same time, as we heard from the chief, we have a responsibility to keep you safe from the impacts of wildfire like the ones we've seen this year. So we're hosting this meeting tonight to present some information and, as you mentioned at the start of it, to answer your questions and hear directly from you on how we operate specifically in Acton. To kick us off, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Tom, so we can get through our presentations quickly and get on to your questions. Tom?
All right, well, thank you, Carla, and good evening to everyone. My name is Tom Malinsky. I'm a fire scientist with Southern California Edison. So what I'm going to do here is talk a little bit about our weather modeling and how we put together a public safety power shutoff event. So can we go to the next slide, please? All right. So I just want to spend a few minutes here. Sorry, is there a question or is there an echo?
Okay.
Sounds like there's an echo. Okay. So talking a little bit about this particular slide here, I want to talk a little bit about how we put together our forecast that determine a public safety power shutoff event, which I'll refer to as PSPS. First of all, we have a team of meteorologists and we have a team of fire scientists that are looking at forecasted weather conditions and looking at critical weather patterns that can lead to significant fire activity. And so what we are looking for is not just critical weather conditions, but we're also looking at where critical weather aligns with areas where we have dry fuels that are going to support rapid fire spread and just the high potential for significant fire activity. So we have to have both those two ingredients in place for us to have a PSPS event. And the one thing I wanted to stress here is that we use weather forecasts to identify a public safety power shutoff event. But when we're in that event, we use observations, real-time weather, to actually make de-energization decisions. So we use those observations to make decisions on whether we're going to turn the power off or not. Okay, so there's a difference there between forecasts and observations. Next slide, please. So while this slide is coming up here, I wanted to just mention that I used to work for the National Weather Service, and I used to issue red flag warnings many years ago. So I understand how the National Weather Service works and how the red flag warning program works versus what we do here at Southern California Edison. So we actually produce our own weather forecasts here at Southern California Edison to help, again, identify those PSPS events. And I wanted to talk just really briefly here about the difference between the National Weather Service and our forecast, because oftentimes we get asked a lot about there's a PSPS event going on in my neighborhood, but the National Weather Service doesn't have any wind advisories in effect or doesn't have any red flag warnings in effect. Why is that? And the reason is because the National Weather Service produces forecasts for large regional areas, and they're covering conditions for the general public. And we're looking at weather conditions that are impacting very localized areas because we're forecasting for basically at the circuit level. So we have all these different circuits that impact your local area, and we have a forecast, a separate forecast for each one of those circuits. And so we're more focused on fine-tuning the forecast for that specific circuit, for that very localized area. And so we can have weather conditions that may be extremely localized. And so the Weather Service is not really talking about the local conditions. They're talking about more the broad scale, weather conditions and impacts to the general public versus where we're focused on, sort of razor focused on those forecasts at the circuit level. So that's the main reason why we might be having a PSPS event, and then the National Weather Service may not have a red flag warning in effect. And so I know there's a lot of information on the slide here, but what I want to just call your attention to is these 4 images here, sort of in this, on the right-hand center portion of the screen. Those 4 boxes, the top left, you can see the squares are pretty big, and in the sort of the bottom right there, or even just the bottom 2 images, the squares are much smaller. So forecasts that come from the National Weather Service are sort of at a coarser resolution, meaning that you have those big squares, right, that cover larger geographic areas versus the forecasts that come out of our office you see the really small squares. So again, we're more focused on the localized conditions. Are we any better than the National Weather Service? No, not at all. We just have a different focus. And so that's what I just want to emphasize with folks here tonight. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. And the other thing, so we talked a little bit about the forecast and our forecasting capabilities at Southern California Edison, how they're tuned to more localized conditions. And that's used to identify a public safety power shutoff event. But then once we're in that event, we will use observations coming from our dense network of weather stations. We have almost 1,800 weather stations. This is a snapshot here. This image that you see is a snapshot of your local area, the Acton area, and you can see all the weather stations that we have installed across our circuits in your area. So we're monitoring all these weather conditions, and we will use these weather conditions. If we're hitting our criteria, we will use these observations to actually make those de-energization decisions. We have a fire potential index that we use to basically tells us what the potential is for a significant wildfire, and that incorporates weather and incorporates fuel moisture conditions across your area. And if we hit certain criteria or certain thresholds within that fire potential index, and we look at wind speeds across the area. So if we meet both wind speed criteria and our fire potential index criteria, then that's when we will turn the power off. Next slide, please. So that's a little bit about our how we identify PSPS events and how we make those de-energization decisions, again, based on observations. I just want to just talk sort of end my presentation here with a couple of comments on what we can expect for the rest of the fire season. As you know, we're heading into peak fire season. And the chief just talked a little bit about that our Santa Ana wind season is just about upon us. Typically starts in late September into early October and goes into the wintertime months. So that's obviously when we start to see our most critical fire with a lot of wind, and you've got a lot of dry fuels already in place. So once the winds start kicking up, then we start to get very concerned about fire activity in your area. Again, we're not expecting any significant precipitation for a little while yet. We're always sort of in that kind of that odd place where where we are expecting the wintertime rains to return, but then our Santa Ana wind season is sort of kicking up at the same time. So I think this year is going to be very different than last year. Last year, as you know, was very dry, and we had a lot of wind in the fall and extended into early into 2025. That is very unlikely for that to happen again as a repeat. What's more likely to happen is sort of a normal onset to winter precipitation, maybe even an earlier start to our winter precipitation. So we might have some rain maybe as early as late September or into October, which could kind of swell some of the fire potential, hopefully, before the Santa Ana winds start to kick up. I don't see this as being as significant of a Santa Ana wind season as last year, so I think it might be a little bit more of a quieter year. But we do have drought conditions in place, and that's what this map on the right is showing. Drought is returning to much of Los Angeles, Ventura counties, so we've got that to contend with, because that's just helping the fuels to dry out a little faster than normal. But we're going to continue to see fire activity ramping up, over the next few weeks here. And as we get into those windy periods, we start seeing those Santa Ana winds. That's when we're going to have the potential for those larger fires. And unfortunately, we'll be dealing with PSPS events once those winds do kick up, just because the fuels are so dry. And until we get those significant rains, we're going to be dealing with public safety power shutoff events when we do see those upticks in wind. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to pass this over to my colleague Ray Fougere, who's going to talk about grid hardening. So Ray, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. As Tom mentioned, my name is Ray Fougere. I'm the Director of Asset and System Intelligence for Southern California Edison. And I'm here to talk to you about grid hardening. And what grid hardening is basically is how do we reduce the likelihood of fires associated with Southern California Edison facilities, and also work to reduce the impacts of PSPS. We do understand, and I personally understand, that losing power is disruptive to your lives, and you're taking steps to minimize that through our grid hardening activities for both PSPS and other unplanned outages. So if we could move to the next slide. There's three kind of grid hardening activities we've done in your area, and I want to cover, just give you an overview of what they are, and then I'll go into a little more specific of what we've done. First is covered conductor. This is where we take, normally electrical wire is bare, meaning it's not coated. If something contacts it in the ground or the wires touch, there can be a spark or an arc. What we're doing is taking that wire down and installing covered conductor. This covered conductor insulates the wires and prevents it from being able to significantly reduces the likelihood an ignition can start from something flying into the lines slapping together. But that's not the only thing we're doing. We're also installing fire-resistant poles and fire-wrapped poles. What these are is when we replace a pole, we're installing a new type of pole. So if a fire, for whatever reason, comes through the area, the poles will stay up. This provides a public safety benefit by keeping the poles up in the air so they don't fall and block streets, causing egress constraints, and also after the fire, we can restore power quicker. And the last one here is protective devices. If we think about a house, most of our houses have circuit breakers in them, and they protect the lines in your house in case something happens, if they get overloaded. What we've been doing is installing more sensitive protection devices, kind of like a ground fault indicator in your bathroom. So it reacts quicker when there's a troublesome event. And so we've installed devices with more sensitive settings to reduce the likelihood if a fire occurs. In addition to that, we've also installed faster acting fuses, and we've installed more throughout the line, and that helps us sectionalize the line, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But the other thing we've done is we've learned about a new technology called Rapid Earth Fault Current Limiter. This is a technology that Australia has been using to fight wildfires, and we're starting to deploy that technology to reduce the likelihood of fires associated with the Southern California Edison facilities. And we actually have one of our first installations in the area of Acton. And so all those are helping us to reduce the likelihood of ignition starting from our facilities and also help to try to reduce our impacts of PSPS. So if we could go to the next slide. So what we've done year to date, not year to date, what we've done over our whole grid hardening program is we've installed over 206 miles of cover conductor on the 3 circuits that serve this area. This is all the overhead miles that our primary distribution wire have been replaced to cover conductor. All the circuits are protected by revco, meaning they will have an extra benefit in case something happens to those wires, reducing the likelihood of a fire even occurring. You can see that we've installed over 13 remote controlled switches and also 13 remote controlled reclosers. What those do is it allows us to break the circuit into smaller pieces and reduce the impacts of PSPS where we can. So instead of having to take out the whole circuit, we can try to target and take out smaller sections of the circuit when it is safe to do so by limiting it. We plan to install more remote controlled switches into the area, bringing that total up to 16 remote controlled switches on these 3 circuits with the 11 reclosers. All of our circuits have also the more faster protection settings that I mentioned. We call them faster. All 3 circuits have that on them as well. So I just want to walk through, just give you an overview of the circuits in particular. So if we could go to the next slide. So the first is the bootlegger circuit. It's a 126-mile long circuit. It's about 76% overhead. The rest is already just naturally underground. On this circuit, we've installed a total of 8 sectionalizing devices on it. And you can, as we can see by the color, there's no yellow indicating that there is no bare overhead wire on this circuit. So all of it has been completely covered on this circuit now. If we can just jump to the next slide as well. The PIC circuit, which is the next circuit, also very similar. It's a little more overhead than the last one. It's 83% overhead, 17% underground, a little shorter of a circuit, 68 miles. But we've installed 6 sectionalizing devices on this circuit. And as you can see on the color coding, there is no yellow there, meaning it is all covered conductor on this circuit. There is no bare wire, or it is all underground. And last but not least, the shovel circuit. About the same percentage of that last circuit, a little less sectionalizing devices installed on the circuit right now. We constantly look at this and evaluate, can we install more sectionalizing devices to reduce those impacts of PSPS, but we are working to drive that down more and more. And so with that, I will pass it to my colleague, Mr. Cameron. Cameron, take it, and also Tom. I see both of you online, so take it away, guys.
Thanks, Ray. I'm going to open up with some updates on our PSPS protocols and criteria, and then I want to hand it over to Cameron to cover some of our recent case studies to help illustrate the criteria for you. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So I think I can go through this pretty quickly so we can maximize time for Q&A. Tom Orlinsky did cover a lot of this, but this really explains the recipe or the ingredients for our PSPS decision-making process. And I know that if I was sitting where you are, I would want to know, well, what is the criteria that you're using to make these decisions? And that's exactly what this slide is getting at. And again, Tom sort of teed this up nicely, but I think just as a quick refresher, you'll remember that Tom mentioned we're looking at 2 primary factors, and both have to be true at the same time. And the first is the fire potential index, which is really a proxy for how receptive the fuel conditions are to ignition and spread. In other words, what would happen?
We've lost you.
You're cut off.
Point at which our equipment becomes vulnerable to flying debris that can pose a risk, such as contact from foreign object, like palm frond or other debris, and that's one of the major drivers of faults for our system. So in terms of thresholds, I'll start with the FPI, or the Fire Potential Index. We looked at historical fire activity to determine the point at which we're starting to see large, dangerous fires occurring across the service territory. And so we did that based on our fire climate zones. And most of our fire climate zones are set at an FPI of 13, which again represents the point at which we're starting to see large fire activity occur within that region. And we do have one zone that's set at 12, and another zone, Catalina, that's set at 11. And so those are the baseline thresholds that we use as the starting point for our decision making. In terms of wind speed thresholds, there's two flavors. One's for bare wire, and for that we start at a baseline threshold of 31 miles an hour sustained and 46 mile an hour gust. And then for circuits that have full covered conductor, we're able to increase that baseline threshold to 40 miles an hour sustained and 58 miles per hour gust. And those numbers aren't arbitrary. The reason they're relevant is because they align with the National Weather Service standards. So for bare wire, 31 sustained and 46 gust is the point at which the National Weather Service has indicated that we can start to see contact from foreign object. So again, that debris flying up and hitting the lines. Think vegetation, think easy ups and tarps and canopies and things like that. They can be a risk to our equipment if they contact the lines. And then the higher threshold for covered conductor coincides with the levels at which the National Weather Service has indicated that you can just start to see sheer infrastructure damage. So things like roofs tearing off of structures or trees falling into lines. So the last point I'll make on this slide is those baseline wind speeds that I just talked about are then adjusted based on circuit engineering characteristics and environmental factors to derive the final threshold that's used for each event. In terms of the FPI, we'll also discount the values that I talked about when we start to see broader fire weather concerns. In other words, concentrated PSPS activity in a particular area. If that occurs, there are instances where we will reduce that FPI threshold because we have seen that we start to see large danger. So this slide covers some updates that we made to our PSPS program for 2025. I'm going to focus on the left column and the right column because the middle doesn't apply so much to your community. The first I already mentioned, and that's that we are now providing a discount to our FPI threshold when we are seeing those broader fire weather concerns taking place within the service territory. And again, we're looking for concentrated regions where we're seeing multiple circuits that are meeting or exceeding PSPS criteria. And again, the reason that that change is relevant is because that coincides with instances where we see large dangerous fires occur below those baseline thresholds that we talked about on the previous slide. Additionally, we're looking at our wind speed discount factors that I had talked about previously. Those are the engineering and environmental characteristics, and we're looking to and have made refinements to how we discount those values. And when all of that's considered, we are anticipating an increase in PSPS activity, more PSPS activation days, anywhere between 20 to 40% more. And the way that we drive that forecast is we took our 2024 weather and we overlaid our 2025 protocol changes that I had just described to you, and it is driving that estimate of up to 40% more PSPS activity across the system. The middle column, again, this doesn't apply to Acton. We're in Tier 3 high fire risk area, but in areas that are not in that same situation, we're also looking at expanding circuits that are eligible for PSPS. They're outside of the traditional California Public Utility Commission high fire risk area, but they share and exhibit those same dangerous fire conditions, even though they're outside of the boundary, because fire doesn't respect boundaries, and we are seeing large dangerous fire activity occur in those areas. But again, I won't spend a lot of time there because this doesn't apply to your community. On the right here, just wanted to note that we talked about, I heard a question about notifications earlier when you were talking to the chief. So generally and always, our desire is to send advance notification when we can. There are instances, though, when even with the sophisticated weather modeling capabilities that Tom talked about previously, we do find that sudden onset of unexpected weather can jump up and cause us to need to de-energize without having provided advance notification. This is to immediately get out ahead of the conditions that are occurring, de-energize the circuit for community safety, and then come back and follow up with the notifications as quickly as possible. So we have a system that's monitoring for PSPS conditions around the clock, and it will notify our incident management team if we do find ourselves in a situation where we're unexpectedly meeting or exceeding PSPS criteria in a location that wasn't previously forecast to do so. So next slide, please. I'll close by talking about our notification timelines, and I'm gonna go straight down to that second row that says 3 days ahead of time. So Tom mentioned we have forecast for every one of our high fire risk area circuits, and we have core supercomputers that are driving those circuit-specific forecasts. Starting 3 days out, if we see a circuit that's forecast to meet or exceed our PSPS criteria that we had talked about on the previous slide, we will begin our notification process to both customers and public safety partners to say, hey, heads up, we're seeing the potential for PSPS in your area, so that public safety partners and customers can begin implementing their preparedness plans. And then as we continue to progress towards the period of concern, the time when we expect those winds to occur, we will send daily updates throughout that process on each day. As we move into the actual period of concern, so the day that we expect the conditions to occur, we will send a notification as we start to see those real-time conditions approaching criteria. As Tom mentioned, we make decisions based on real-time data coming in from our weather stations, and as we see those values start to increase and approach our thresholds, we'll send what we call an expected shut-off notification to say, hey, look, conditions are worsening and de-energization is looking more likely. If we do need to turn the power off because we do meet thresholds based on those real-time observations, we will send a notification when power is shut off. And then as we start the restoration process, when the conditions start to settle, we'll send a notification to let you know that we've started our restoration patrols. And then again, when power's been restored. I'll close on this slide just by reiterating that it's not possible in all cases to meet this timeline, because there are instances where forecasts don't pick up the conditions and we find ourselves in a situation where sudden onset of unexpected weather has occurred and we have to move quicker. But this is certainly our desire, and it's the notification timeline that we prescribe and strive to always meet. So with that, I want to go ahead and hand it over to Cam McPherson, who will walk you through some of this in a case study format. Cam, it's all yours.
Thanks, Tom, and thank you, Cam McPherson with SCE T&D Emergency Operations. I wanted to take some of what you've heard from Tom's and Ray and translate that into what you may have experienced during the early January time frame. Next slide, please. So we're going to walk through the three segments, the three circuits that serve Acton. Again, very long circuits, so that does afford us some segmentation, but it can complicate patrol and restoration, which I'll go through a little bit right here. As far as the shovel segment is concerned, it is broken into 5 isolatable segments. The highest winds on this circuit are typically recorded at the Garlock weather station, which is just to the west of Acton substation and near the first segment out of the substation that powers the rest of that circuit. Next slide. As an example, on January 14th, around 3 a.m., that FCE Garlock weather station did hit our criteria, and the entire circuit was de-energized. The following day, around 1:15, after conditions abated, we were authorized to patrol and restore that circuit. Around 11:21 p.m., the circuit, the field crews made good progress with patrolling all sections 1, 2, 3, and 4 were re-energized by 11:20. However, that small segment to the north, segment 5, requires a helicopter to patrol, and we were able to patrol it that evening. The following morning, winds picked up a little bit. The helicopter was unable to fly during the early morning hours, but was able to lift off late morning and patrol and restore those remaining 10 customers early afternoon around 1:03 p.m. on the 16th. Next slide. For the bootlegger circuit, another very long circuit in the area, including a branch that runs all the way up into the San Gabriel Mountains along Angeles Crest Highway, broken into 11 segments, which very long. A lot of weather stations inform this segment, or the circuit, including N3 Highway along Angeles Crest, and also Forest View Road, Monte Cristo Creek up near Singing Springs, and also the SCE Acton weather station over near the weather station near the substation. Again, during January 2025 events, we saw observed weather at 40 miles an hour sustained and 58 gusts at all 4 of these weather stations, and highlighting the very high winds that we experienced during the January timeframe. Next slide. A specific example regarding bootlegger and with the really highlights the complexity of the weather systems that we have to deal with at times, and January was, at the end of January was no exception. On January 25th, around 3:12 a.m., we did see that the N3 weather station off Angeles Crest Highway hit our criteria, de-energizing segment 5 and segment 6 towards the south end of the circuit. On January 26th, the following morning, we did get approval to patrol and restore that circuit. However, we got the storm that brought heavy winds into the area that weekend was also bringing precipitation later that day on the 26th, and that's exactly what we saw, which complicated the patrol and brought precipitation, I believe, from snowing, which slowed down the patrol on those segments 5 and 6, which are those more rugged areas. The team was able to finally get the segment 5 and most of segment 6 customers re-energized, just leaving a small group on segment 6 that required helicopter patrol. Following morning, January 27th, though the helicopter was not able to lift off due to that precipitation and fog, but was able to lift off later that morning and patrol that circuit and get them up in the early afternoon, 2:34 p.m. on the 27th. Next slide. Regarding the TIG circuit, the third circuit, this has 6 similar weather stations, Acton, Florenceville, and Garlock. Again, these 3 weather stations all had routinely registered sustained wind speeds of near 40 miles an hour and over 58 gusts in this particular area in January. Next slide. Specific example from the TIG circuit. This highlights how we are able to de-energize only certain segments at certain times during an event. In the beginning of the event, about 2 o'clock in the morning, SB Garlock weather station met criteria, and that de-energized just segment 2, the top left-hand corner. However, later that morning, the Florenceville Avenue, which on this circuit informs the first part of that circuit, we had to de-energize that first part, because de-energized the remainder of that circuit, unfortunately. The circuit was released for control and restoration after the conditions had abated later that afternoon at 5:23, and the trucks, the field employees were able to patrol that particular circuit all by truck and got them up around 1:39 in the morning. Next slide. Lastly, and it's kind of a reiteration of what Ray said, I just wanted to make sure that the team knew here that all of the 3 circuits that serve Acton are now covered and subject to that higher threshold. Just wanted to cover that real quick. Thank you very much, and I'm going to hand it off to Jennifer Ocampo.
Thank you, Cameron. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jennifer Ocampo, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our customer resiliency program. So here in Southern California, Edison, we have a number of resiliency programs. Let's move to the next slide, please. Some of those include backup generation, and in our backup generation programs, we have them listed here, such as the Critical Care Battery Backup Program, which is for eligible customers who are in the medical baseline program. But we also have rebates and incentives available for customers who live in high fire risk areas. I want to also remind you guys that during a PSPS around emergency preparedness ahead of PSPS, but also providing assistance during PSPS. And some of those assistance programs can include transportation, lodging, connecting you to a battery program, and food assistance. And finally, after a PSPS, for those that have experienced food loss, we have food bank partnerships where you can always visit one of the local food banks to request some food assistance. And with that, I'm going to pass it down to Carla for Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I did want to note for the room, we ended up muting the sound because we could hear the background. So if someone could actually unmute the room, that way we can hear you back in the room, that would be helpful.
Can you hear us now? Can you hear us now?
Inside of the room needs to, oh, there we go. Fantastic. We can hear now. Thank you again for your patience as the team moves through those slides. I hope you found the presentation informative. We will now open it up to questions. If you can come up to the mic so that we can hear you, that would be fantastic.
I'm going to start off. I have several questions, but I'm not even going to start with them. I'm going to start with your presentation. The first thing you said is that you used the Garlock reading to cut power on the shuttle circuit. Garlock is on Red Rover Mine Road. It's in a valley. It does not represent what goes on shuttle, and has nothing to do with shuttle. It is on the PIC circuit, and it can be segmented from the PIC circuit. So the fact that you use Garlock to shut off power on shovel, which is miles away over Ridgeline, and by the way, as we've commented to you, Garlock is located at right almost up the top of the Ridgeline on the west side of Red Rover Mine Road, at a gap where the winds are always very high. You cut off power to Red Rover Mine Road based on Garlock reading, that's one thing. But when you cut power on the entire fixed segment because of Garlock, which is what you just said you did, and then you cut power on shovel because of Garlock, shovel isn't even anywhere near it. So I got a problem with that, starting with that. So please respond.
Was there a specific question? I just want to make sure we're responding to the question.
Yes,
I heard about.
Explain to me why you cut power on the entire shovel circuit based on Garlock readings when Garlock is on the PIC circuit and it's in Red Rover Mine Road, which does not represent in any way meteorological conditions on the shovel circuit. And why you use Garlock to cut power on the entire PIC circuit, including to Crown Meadow, which is 100% underground from the Acton substation. So there are your questions.
Thank you, appreciate that. Cameron, are you ready to take that one?
Yeah, and unfortunately I can't speak to the strict assignment. I don't know that particular area well. I don't know all of the areas well enough to speak intelligently to answer that question. What I can say is that we have probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-ish. I know I heard a lot of circuits. We have about 10 to 12 weather stations in that area. One weather station, it could be 2, 3, or maybe even 4 weather stations that inform the de-energization of a particular segment because it is representative of the conditions that our overhead wires in one portion of that segment experience.
Hey Cameron, just to build on that, I'll just mention that our meteorologists do conduct a proximity study by looking at all the available weather stations, the 1870, and tie those back to the circuits that they believe provide a representative indication. So we can take that back and make sure that that's mapped tightly, but generally just wanted to note that our meteorologists are going through and doing that study and updating it on a regular basis.
Thanks, Tom.
So just making sure, team, it sounds like, just want to clarify, the one weather station doesn't determine the decision for both of those areas, because I think that was what the woman in green was asking.
If you're referring to the Garlock station,
yes,
that is near the substation. And because that substation serves multiple circuits, by virtue, it is connected, at least currently. I'm, like Tom said, more than happy to conduct a review again if we want to do that. But from the map that I'm seeing, the Garlock station is near the substation. And because all of the segments that serve Acton come out of the Acton substation, that Garlock weather station can and will inform, at least at the moment, the de-energization of several segments and circuits.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, moving on to the next question.
Okay, I have a question. Who makes the decision to turn the power back on, and how do we reach that person? Because when we call SCE, they don't know anything. They don't know anything. The power will be turned on back between 1 p.m. and midnight. They don't know anything. I was speaking with a man named Brad, who identified himself as a district manager. He won't take my phone calls anymore. And what he told me was because what happened, probably because enough wind. Now I understand why you guys, there will be wind blowing off everything on shovel 3, and you leave the power off. But then the wind will start to go down, and you turn it off. And not only do you turn it off, you leave it off all night, because when I spoke to Brad, what he told me was, well, we have to inspect the lines all the way, and we can't send the helicopters out at night, and so we're just going to leave it off until morning. And so what I want to know is who makes the decision? Somebody there makes the decision about when to turn the power back on, and how do we reach that person? Because your return response is not sensitive enough. Brad explained to me that there's weather stations and that they collect the information from the weather station. I said, well, I'm standing outside and you can't hear any wind, can you? He said, no, I can't. I said, and still the power is off. And it was, and it remained off while the wind was gone. So who makes the decision and how do we reach that?
Of course, I'm happy to ask Tom to jump in.
Happy to. So we use an incident management team to make the decisions. We activate our emergency response framework. We bring in an incident management team, and we have a whole operations section branch that's watching the wind speeds and the fire potential index values across every one of our circuits in real time. And so every 10 minutes, those weather station values adjust based on the real-time ground conditions that are occurring. And once the wind conditions that caused us to de-energize have abated or gone away, we will initiate the restoration process where we send crew out to control the line to make sure there's...
I'm sorry to interrupt you. No, you don't. I went through these things, okay? I spoke to Brad. He identified himself as a district manager. He explained to me that because the weather stations are saying that there's a cut-off wind, that they weren't going to turn the power back on. But there was no wind on shovel 3. I was standing there. And I held the phone up for him to listen. He said, no, I don't hear any wind. I said, that's because there isn't any. So your machines are not accurate, is what I'm saying. They're not accurate. And at the very beginning, when you started using the SPSs, you used to sit humans down there, and outside the little car, they would hold a little device, I don't know what it was, and they would put it in the device and they would call it in. But you don't do that anymore. At least not on shovel 3, you don't, because our power is turned off, and right down on Crown Valley, the ARCO, they all have their power. 760, I am one exit up from the ARCO. I had no wind either, and they left it off. So my question is, how do we reach your management team so we can tell them what's really going on? I'll do it for free. And tell them, hey guys, I don't know what your machine says, it's no wind over here. So you can make a better assessment about when to turn our power back.
So just a couple of responses. So our circuits are sometimes many miles long. So although you might not be experiencing wind in that specific area, upstream from where you are, it's possible that it's still windy, and so that would require us to continue to leave the downstream portions of the circuit off, since we can't turn the source on that's feeding it. So there's a windy neighborhood sort of concept that we try to explain, which is that just because it's not windy right where you are, doesn't mean that the place where that circuit's originating isn't windy. And I'll just also note that we do calibrate our weather stations annually. We use qualified electrical workers that go out and assess them to make sure they're accurate. And in some cases, our troublemaker, our qualified electrical workers still do have those test drills. But I think what's occurring is it's probably still windy upstream of where you are.
Okay, how do we reach the, but you didn't answer my question. How do we reach the management team to let you know that your assessment is inaccurate? Because I live in Shannon Valley. Shannon Valley is on the shovel circuit. There was nothing going on in Shannon Valley, and you left the power off. And my neighbor across the street is on oxygen, and she was having a really hard time. So my question is, how do we reach your management team, or are you just going to tell me we can't?
No, I think you can reach out to our GRM. Carla, would you agree that that's the right path for escalation?
The government relations manager is not really the customer service person in the area, so to answer your question directly, you cannot call into our instant control center. I'm being very trying to be direct with my answer to give you a sense. You can't call into our incident command center because it's not set up that way.
So who do you call? Why not? I mean, you're cutting our power. Why can't we call you and say, hey, we got power?
You can absolutely call us. That is certainly not what I want to, that's not the impression I want to leave. You asked a different question. Who's making the decision to turn the power off? There is a head person that runs our incident command center. Every week it's a different person because that's who's assigned based on where the activation is. So then yes, during an incident, you are not able to reach that assigned person. During an incident, there's other places that you can call because that person to that point is making the decisions that are really challenging. So you can call our customer service line. They're available.
No, they're useless. I called them and they're absolutely useless. No, I'm asking who you can call during an incident.
That is the answer of who you can call. I'm happy to pass that feedback along to my...
I made complaints to the PUC because of the lack of customer service that I have received when I called during the PSPS and nobody would answer my questions about when it was going to be turned back on and who was making the decision. And I think
I completely hear that.
Customers, you should be able to know who to call.
I completely hear that, and I'm so sorry that that's been a frustrating experience, and I can just to echo that frustration, I would be frustrated by that experience myself. No, but to that point, when you're calling us, and just to try to again clarify and provide information, when you're calling us to find out when the power is going to be turned back on, we may not have.
That's not what I'm calling for.
Of course.
I'm calling to speak to the people that make the decision to turn the power back on to let us know that the machines are not accurate and they should turn the power back on because there's no wind. That's who I'm calling. I don't really care because whenever I call the customer service people, they don't know when the power's going to be turned back on and they tell me.
That's right.
And now Brad, when I call Brad, he won't take my calls anymore because I put all of this out in front of him and he said to me, there's nothing I can do about it. But would you like to know how I got Brad's number? I got a couple of your people in a truck and I asked them, who can I call? Because I've got no power. And they were nice enough to give me Brad's number. How about that? They won't take my calls anymore. So now,
of course, and to that point, Brad's likely not sitting in the incident management, team who's making that decision. So I just, again, to clarify, in that moment when we are activated, customer service is the first place to call.
So what you're telling me is there's nothing we can do. There's no one we can talk to tell them on the ground, boots on the ground, what's going on with our area so they can take that into consideration about when we cancel the PSP.
Right.
Is that what you're telling me?
No, that's not what I'm telling you. I'm telling you that you can always call our customer service line and provide that information. That information comes directly into the teams that are making the decisions.
No, it doesn't. I asked
two more questions.
You know, I don't want to take the whole day. I'm sorry.
She's not going to answer your question.
Okay, she's not here.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I'm sorry.
Hi.
Sure. Based on what I heard here tonight, power's coming back on at times like 1:30 in the morning. Now, explain to me why, if the choppers can't fly, how is it that you can determine that the power can come back on at 1:30 in the morning, when in other parts of the circuits, you can't make that decision because, oh yeah, the choppers can't fly. And secondly, let's revisit that 20 to 40% increase in PSPS alerts this year. Please explain again, and whoever explained it, the gentleman needs to step up and clarify that, because I have to tell you, in the third row here, you can't read these freaking slides.
Okay.
So I need to understand what justifies the 20 to 40% increase in PSPS alerts when 5-10 years ago, this stuff didn't even go on. We didn't lose our power arbitrarily because of a PSPS. We lost it because of a genuine problem. Not because, I'm sorry, not because the corporate structure was concerned about being sued. And I'm going to say that real plainly. But I'd like to understand the 20% increase. I'd like to understand how some circuits can be partially re-energized at night and others can't. I have seen guys on the ground at night, at odd hours, so somebody's out looking at circuits.
Yes.
But why is that not the case? I understand if the circuit is way up in the hills and you can't see it. But for the most part, it seems entirely arbitrary. Thank you.
No, thank you for both questions. So let's go to the first question. Cam, would you be able to answer the question? And just to reiterate, power is going back on at 1:30 in the morning. Sometimes we can make that determination, sometimes we can't make that determination. Can you please give us some insight on how that piece works in particular?
Yeah, the particular circuit that I did mention is the big circuit, and that circuit can be patrolled via truck. It's a very long circuit, but it can be. There's better roads, there's better accessibility, and the patrolmen are able to use their spotlights and check the lines. The other circuits both have sections that go up into the very hilly mountainous San Mountains or to the north, and are unable to, there's literally no road next to the power line in some of these, and they're unable to see it even with their spotlights and require helicopter patrol. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Cam. So let's go to the second question, and it's specifically related to clarifying a 20 to 40% increase in PSPS that are projected for this year. Let me see, Tom, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, got you. I'm sorry that the words on the slide were too small, so I'm happy to explain it again. So we looked at historical fire activity and determined that there were instances where large dangerous fires were occurring below our baseline FPI criteria that I had described on that slide that showed the thresholds. And so therefore, we've determined that when we are seeing concentrated areas of broader fire weather conditions occurring, that we need to reduce the FPI threshold by up to 2 points to help make sure that we're catching those large dangerous fires that are occurring at those lower FPI levels. And so as a result of making that change, and we looked at the backcast, and by looking at 2024 weather and overlaying the protocol change that I just described, and we've noted that it can increase PSPS frequency by up to 40%. And that metric system-wide.
Can we go back 2 or 3 or 5 years and understand that we're not having fires up here in Acton? And to arbitrarily increase the PSPS incident or incidents is really not justified by anything other than what you're saying about the 2024 weather. We've had droughts up here before. We have not had our power cut off.
Especially after they harden the circuits.
Yeah,
so Tom Orlinsky.
Especially after the circuits have been hardened.
So Tom Orlinsky's on the line. I think he can address the question about fire behavior within the Acton area. I think the chief also addressed potentially a fire that just recently occurred, the Hawk Fire in the community. So we are very concerned that fires can occur in that area, and we found that looking at data, we've seen that large dangerous fires can occur at lower FPI levels, and that's why we adjust the threshold downward when we are seeing broader fire weather concerns.
Tom, is there something you can add to respond to the question?
Just that, we do understand that your area does get a lot of fire activity. As I mentioned before, it's a windy, it's a windy area. You guys know that better than anyone else. You guys get a lot of wind. Your vegetation is very dry there much of the year. But we're concerned about the wildfire activity that you can have. And even though they may not be huge wildfires, they're wildfires nonetheless that pose a threat to life and property, and that's what we're concerned about.
Okay, but we're not having fires. That was exactly my point, is we're not having fires up here. We are a remarkably careful and observant community. The Hawk Fire is the first fire that's been up in this area since last year, if I am correct. Anybody else feel free to correct me? And it flew to Palmdale. It didn't affect circuits in Acton. And I understand, while I understand you're saying we have a fire up here, it didn't affect us. And still you're figuring it into your 20 to 40% increase. Sorry, that didn't sound like a question. Why, I still don't understand why you're only basing it on 2024, when we didn't have fires up here last year.
During the January PSPS events, so looking across multiple events that happened within the month of January, we saw 90 instances, over 90 instances, where there was damage caused to our infrastructure by winds while the circuits were de-energized. Had those circuits been on, that could have been an ignition source. And so when we're seeing these extremely dry conditions, and we're seeing these increased wind speeds, there is the potential for large dangerous fires to occur. And the reason that we've applied that 2-point threshold adjustment is because when there's concentrations of broader fire risk, the data has shown that fires are occurring at lower FPI levels, and it's a change that's necessary to protect the customers and communities that we serve.
And SCE's hardening of the infrastructure has no bearing on these decisions.
It does have a bearing on, it's a good question, and it does have a bearing on the decisions. It changes the threshold, as you saw from that slide. So it has increased the threshold, which is positive. I think what the piece that I want to also punctuate here is that our projections, when we're doing PSPS, are just projections. The wind actually has to materialize on those circuits to then actually get the shutoff to happen. So you might be, when we're saying 20 to 40% more, you might be notified 20 to 40% more times, given some of these projections. For the shutoff to actually occur, the wind has to go above those thresholds that appeared on each of the slides to then create the shutoff, if that makes sense. So the backcast he's talking about, that's us looking back at if we had the exact same weather last year that we do this year, which, as we know, is not necessarily the case. It may be the case, this is just an estimate. That's what we would see with the exact same weather from last year. However, we're using the actual weather that we're seeing on the ground every single day. So we might notify you based on, as we shared, we have some, fire weather conditions that are coming, a red flag warning. But if those wind speeds don't actually meet the thresholds, you might be noticed, but the power won't shut off. You have to still have those wind speed thresholds met in order for the power to be shut off. So I just wanted to clarify that piece in terms of what those projections mean.
Okay, I'm going to yield the floor because I need to yield the floor.
Thank you.
I appreciate what you just said several times, that you don't cut power until the wind thresholds are exceeded. I downloaded 12 hours worth of data before power is cut off on every segment, and 12 hours afterwards on every single net station that you have to have. Downloaded every month. And in every case, with the exception of Garlock and N3, I'll talk about that in a minute, the wind speed was never exceeded. It was nowhere near Garlock. And as an aside, you're looking at a map and you're saying Garlock is near the Acton substation. That is incorrect. Garlock is in a red rover line down. It's a valley, so it's separated from the Acton substation by a mountain. And so the conditions in Garlock have nothing to do with the conditions of the Acton substation. I just want you to observe that and understand that. So I'd like to understand why, and it's all detailed in the report that we submitted to the commission, and you have a copy because you were served a copy, why every circuit and every segment was de-energized, even though there were only 2 places where wind speeds exceeded, and in those cases, you cut power before the wind speed thresholds were exceeded at both of them. And another aside, N3 is not on a distribution circuit. It's high up on the ridge line, deep in the Angeles Forest Highway on a transmission line. So it does not represent anything going on in the Boriston neighborhood, or up Soledad Pass, or over on Shovel, which is 10 miles away. So you should not be using them. So please explain to me why, when you have all the data, you cut circuits and segments everywhere, even though none of your weather stations showed exceedances of either the sustained wind speeds or the threshold, wind gust threshold.
Hey, Carl, I'll just tee it up, and then if Cameron or others want to join and add additional detail, that'd be great. I'll start by just opening up that when we do de-energize ahead of the stated threshold, it's when we see the conditions are approaching that, they're heading that direction, they're forecast to meet or exceed the threshold, and the de-energization is implemented before those values are exceeded. So in a large event, when we have multiple circuits that are approaching criteria simultaneously, it's important for us to lean in and start the de-energization process as we start to see those wind trends pick up, and we're starting to get close to those threshold values so that we can de-energize the circuit before those thresholds are reached. And then Cam, feel free to add anything that I may have missed.
No, I think you covered it well, Tom. Those are the thresholds that Tom talked about, are baseline thresholds. And during the January event, we had significant wind and fire concerns, fuel concerns. And so because of the size of the event, because of the complexity of the event, the amount of circuits that we had to deal with all at once, because of the fire suppression resource concerns, we did have discounts in place that lowered below the threshold, which might explain why all of those were detailed in the post-event report that was submitted during the January events.
Okay, because I also downloaded all the data afterwards, and no circuits ever got to those thresholds. So what I'm hearing is you de-energize Acton, even though we don't hit the wind speed thresholds, we don't hit the wind gust thresholds, because Edison has so many circuits that they're monitoring that they just have to cut power in Acton, even though we don't exceed the thresholds.
I think I just want to clarify that we de-energize them when the forecast is saying that we're going to meet or exceed the thresholds, and we start to see the winds escalating and trimming that direction and getting close to the threshold. We de-energize them preemptively so we don't hit that stated threshold. And then, like Cam mentioned, in the January events, we described extensively in our post-event report that was filed with the Public Utilities Commission that we did implement de-energizations early because we were seeing significant resource drawdown across the fire suppression community. We had the fire agencies fighting multiple fires. We were seeing wind speeds that we've never seen before in some locations, multiple areas over 100 miles an hour. Some locations that our weather stations haven't had historical values that high. So really unprecedented in some areas and just very extreme in others. And so for all those reasons, as we described in the post-event report, we did implement de-energizations early to avoid reaching those higher threshold values that are provided in the post-event report.
Well said, Tom.
I think it's very important when you tell this community that you're not going to cut power unless the winds materialize the threshold, we exceed the thresholds, when in fact that's not true. You cut the power early, especially if, for example, they're fighting a fire in the Palisades and Eaton. You cut our power early. I just think it's important that you tell people that from the beginning, instead of telling them like you did during this presentation, the FBI has to be exceeded and the thresholds have to be exceeded. Neither of those things are true because you cut power on the San Canyon circuit when the FBI wasn't even at 11. So that was another problem. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Hello, I'm going to change the focus.
Hello.
I'm going to change the focus a little bit here. Now, have any of you ever been to the community center going to PSPS?
Yes.
I can't say I have, but I don't want to speak for the rest of the team.
Okay, let me tell you, first of all, Southern California Edison has one job, which is to give us electricity. It's not like a food store where if I'm not happy with routes, I can go to state. I can't go anywhere else. I got you, Southern California Edison, and me are stuck together. So if you shut off my electricity, we're in a rural area. I have no water. I have no heat. I have no internet. My cell phone I get from T-Mobile, it's going to be shutting down in a day or two. We lost our electricity 4 days, twice in January. I have horses and dogs and cats and myself, and we have no security. It's pitch black out there. Our alarm system won't work. So when you do that, so then you come out and say, okay, come on down to the community center. I go down there, and you have 2 tables. You have 4 tables total, shaped in an L. You have one guy sitting behind the computer. You have a box of water, some snacks they got at Costco, and you walk in there and you go, oh, here, take some stuff. Here's a jug of water. I'm going to feed 3 horses. I'm going to give 3 horses, 2 people, 3 dogs, and a cat, and work our toilets in a gallon jug of water. put it in, and when the electricity goes off, it stays on. Okay, that's nice. Well, it's not charged. I don't have electricity. How am I going to charge it? He said, oh, well, when you come back on, get it charged and be ready. Okay. And he said, oh, we have these coupons for ice. You can go up to the 7-Eleven at the Shell station, but they're outdated, so they may not take them. But if you tell them you really need it, this is the Southern California Edison Community Outreach. This is what you guys provide us. And then to top it all off, I'm already discussed it. I turn around, I go to walk out, and I go, hold it. On your way out, grab some firewood. We have boxes of firewood for you. I go, you shut off my electricity. Because you're fearful of fire. So I'm going to go home and put that on the patio and just let the embers go everywhere. I mean, you guys make no sense. If you're going to do this responsibility of shutting off our electricity worker, you have to do the whole thing. The community outreach, you're going to have to go out there. What I need is somebody to drive around with water to every home to fill up the horse's water. What I need is food coupons or food, because our restaurants are shutting down because there was no electricity. Where am I going to eat? The refrigerator is already shut off. These are things you have to do. You have to get private security people to drive around. You don't think people in the valley here that there's no electricity in Acton and it's pitch black? There's a nice place to rock. Because the security system's down, the cameras are down, the alarms are off. You need to step up and do this. You can't do it half-assed, which was Southern California has been doing. So, have you ever been to a community outreach?
Apologies, I thought, I actually have been to some of our community centers. I thought you went to one in your neighborhood. But this is important feedback because, and again, truly, I'm sorry that was your experience. I am going to take this feedback back. There's a lot of things here we could do better. I think even some of the things that sounded in the spirit, like, with the light bulbs, which I've been to some that they are charged and they are meant to provide even just a little bit of power. It sounds like that did not go as planned. So I just first and foremost want to apologize for your experience. This is important feedback I'm going to take back. I do want to give Jennifer an opportunity to pop on really quick, because I want to ask her specifically in terms of your questions around water for the animals, for the horses, food. Jennifer, is there anything that we can share with this gentleman regarding some of these questions and frankly, again, water, food issues that can come up that would be helpful in the moment?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question and I appreciate the feedback as well. That's definitely something that we will bring back to our team. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we have a variety of programs that are available for our customers. Each situation is very different. So I do encourage you to create your own emergency plan depending to your needs. So we have partnered with, for example, 211 and DDAR, and those are for our most vulnerable customers who have access and functional needs. They help through that emergency planning. And from what I'm hearing, some of those things that you could benefit from is potentially some generator rebates for the well waters, potentially having water bladders. There's such a thing as an emergency water bladder that you can either put outside of your home or even in your bathtub. And once you fill it out, you can provide, water for your horses and family and whatever you need that for. But yeah, definitely I'll take that feedback to my team in particularly the community resource centers. In regards to the coupons, we were aware that some of the coupons on the January event were expired. We, however, had communications with our 7-Eleven partners where we asked them to take those coupons.
Perfect.
Do you want to put an email up there for us? Right now, we don't have phone numbers or emails for any of you guys that are having this conversation with us, so a point of contact would be greatly appreciated. I think everybody would like that. So the first one is the grid hardening. What's the completion date for Acton?
The grid hardening, let's go to Cam. Cameron?
Yeah, good evening. As far as the overhead cover conductor work is concerned, all of that cover conductor work is complete on those 3 circuits. All of the overhead bare wire is coated with a cover conductor. I am not aware if there is any undergrounding scope in the area, so I can't speak to that, unfortunately. But as far as cover conductor work is concerned, it is all complete.
Okay, and the poles themselves, we were told we were going to have a power shut-off to have the poles replaced down the Crown Valley Road. It has not happened. So
I don't know if Ryan or Ray want to join and correct me, but I would say that pole replacements were, there were pole replacements done as part of the cover conductor project. There might be some remaining poles that have to be replaced, either with new poles, deteriorated poles over time. There might be.
You froze. You froze.
Privy to the schedule of the remaining pole replacements.
Let me get you an answer for that. If this, just checking here, does anyone have an answer on when the pole replacement is supposed to happen? Feel free to unmute if you have the answer.
It appears that I'm getting a side shot from one of the engineers in the area. There are 3 pending automated switches to help with sectionalization. There is no targeted undergrounding scope at this time, and unfortunately, we do not have any info on the poles.
Okay.
And then you see 2024, the requires when the lines will be energized. I just want to know, when is the last time that they came out and checked the lines using the helicopters to make sure there's no debris that's going to fall on the lines again? And on top of that, who is responsible for the easements for the Edison transmission corridors that are going to the HOAs? We have a risk assessment going on Tuesday for 189 homes. I want to make sure I have contact for that area to be clean.
Okay, I'll answer the first question. Those circuits, anytime a circuit is, as far as controls are concerned, anytime a circuit in high fire risk areas, such as any circuit in your area, if it turns off or any kind of trouble, that circuit, that portion has to be completely patrolled before the power is turned back on. That is the same with the SPS. We also conduct pre-patrols on every circuit when possible. Every circuit before a PSPS event, we conduct pre-patrols the entire length of that circuit before each PSPS event. And then I can't speak to inspections, but because this is Tier 3 high fire risk area, we have risk-informed inspections, detailed inspections. You might see a gentleman or a person driving around in a truck with a drone and inspecting those poles one by one, and that happens at a minimum, I want to say, at a 6 to 12 month basis.
On that note, you should on the screen see an email address, wildfireoutreach@sce.com. Is that still up?
Yes.
Yeah, if you can email us just with your contact information, I'm happy to have, it sounds like there's a question on full replacement date, there's a question on when did we last inspect the lines, and then there's a question on who's responsible for easements that are going through the HOAs. I don't know that we have somebody on this call that's going to be able to answer that last one on the HOA, so I want to make sure we get you an answer. If you wouldn't mind just sending us a note with your contact information, I can have someone follow up.
Now, Carla, is that email going to go directly to you, or do you want to
It goes straight to my team, to the team of folks we manage some of the community outreach, community engagement meetings on wildfire specifically. So there's a senior advisor team who looks at this email, and they're very responsive. They also flag it. Amazing. Thank you, Heather, for your work on that. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Ken Falscraft. I'm a 20-year resident of Acton. Before I get rolling here, I am a 25-year division manager for a public agency. Part of that responsibility is management of tree resources with urban wildfire interfaces. So I'm familiar with the science of this. I want you to know that our community has been resilient since the 1860s, before all the gadgets went up to tell us that the wind was blowing. That's not funny. I'm also aware of what it's like to stand in a public meeting and be a public employee and have people think because they're a taxpayer they can berate you. We have civility statements where I work, and at the interest I'm about to speak at, I am an elected official of the school board. I'm going into my 10th year of service. Here's what I want to tell you. Our whole community depends on our word meaning something to the people we talk to. That might mean our landlord, that might mean our employer, that might mean the promise that we make to the kids that we're going to give them continual education so they can come out and be employable. But we are a commuter community. I think for the most part, the data would show that we are compliant with fire clearance rules. And so I think we do our part as much as we can as homeowners. And this is not a confessional. I'm not here to tell you what I think about how you do your job. But we depend on reliability at the school district. And I'm one school board member, and I'm probably the loudest one, so the rest of them, they might not like what I say, but they're used to that. But here's what concerns me. Here's what happens. Let's say I'm a teacher. Let's say I'm a parent. Let's say I find out on the way in from Santa Clarita that the school is closed, and I don't hear from the school because the school hasn't been notified before the power goes off. That sets off a chain reaction. Suddenly, and I'm not going to go to Title IX here, but I think you guys are smart enough to know what that means. At my work, I constantly see during mass sick events, flu, COVID, whatever you want to call it, there seems to be a certain group of individuals that just can't come to work because they're the one that has to take care of the children. And I don't know whether I was born with the wrong equipment to take care of a child, I don't know, but this group is punished for unreliability. It results in loss of promotability, lower income. Like I said, I'm not going to give a treatise on Title IX, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. So 4 or 5 days in a row, 3 days I can be there. Some employers actually want people at work to be measurable to their customers rather than commuting and pretending they're at work when they're actually in Texas or something. So we depend on reliability. I think what you're hearing from the community is some of these people have lived here 2 and 3 times longer than my 20 years. And I know what it's like when I go outside, and I know what the wind is. I can put my finger in my mouth and go like this and go, hey, this is cool over here. But when they see that there's no wind, an improvement in the technology that discovers these things does not mean that there's an actual increase in the amount of there we go, thank you.
Oh, apologies, I couldn't hear that.
So we have a little pause there. So I think the perception may be that the monitoring equipment is better, the demands from the state and everybody is higher, but the improvement in technology is not reflective in the experience of the people here. And so back to the school thing, continuum is really, really important in a child's education, especially if we're not at the top of the class.
Of course.
And so, days that are missed, and when we're opening schools running on candlelight, I had a school board meeting candlelight. I pretend I was Abraham Lincoln, so I felt really good about it. But at the end of the day, you guys have to be able to tell us before the power goes down, so we can tell our customers, so they can tell their employers that, because what's really at risk here is our accountability to our neighbors, to our employers. So this is not an I gotcha moment. This is just kind of, it goes with my experience at work. The community I work for is affluent. Everybody in the whole world knows who they are. We have resources because we're accountable in service. So what I'm wondering is, we know that people will come together in this community. If there's a death in your family, you cannot believe the support you get from this community. But there are certain parts of this community. It's the library, which is a county asset. You have the community center. You have the park. You have our schools. I would think that somewhere in the predictability of all this is getting worse and all this global warming thing and all that, that somebody might be in touch with the school district, because at the school district, we have a subcommittee that looks at, do we have the money to put in a generator? And God forbid you would say battery backup in this town. But are there resiliency programs that are being brought? Because here's the problem: you subcontract. I better be careful here. Public agency responsibility to subcontractors, power purveyors, tree trimmers, whoever it might be. You give away control. And some of that control is resiliency planning. I would appreciate it very much. I think we owe it to our children. Thank you for your patience tonight. Again, I don't need that. I really don't.
Was it, your name was Ken, sir?
Ken, Google me, I'm everywhere.
If you wouldn't mind, I think there's some follow-up there, and I'd love to reach out to my counterparts in customer service who manage schools and make sure that connection is being made so that we can follow up with that conversation on what might be possible there, and if there's any options, like you mentioned, resiliency programs specific to schools. I'm not an expert in that space, but I'd love to connect you. If you wouldn't mind sending us your contact information. I know I lost you on the screen, but our email should still be up. Okay.
Ken is still here. He's hearing what you're saying.
Oh, okay. Fantastic.
And we do need to do something about our schools. There are programs out there that are for schools, except for the way that Edison in particular and SDG have chosen to define the term rural. Our community does not qualify. In fact, no community in LA County qualifies at all, except for people who live on the island of the Santa Cruz. So you need to redefine rural so that our community and our school district can come together and get a microgrid for each campus so that schools don't. That's not my question. I'm just agreeing.
No, but thank you for the feedback, particularly on schools. I think that's again.
Medicine, you guys need to find a way to keep our schools open during PSPS. We lost 2 weeks of school in 2019, 2 weeks in 2020. We lost a lot of time this year too, just as they were putting back in Christmas break. So you guys need to figure out how to get out of our schools. Okay, I have 2 questions. The first question deals with sectionalization. It's a 2-part. I would like to know when you're going to sectionalize Crown Meadows, which is 100% underground, from the Acton substation. You cut it every time you cut power. It's probably the least cut segment, but it's cut. And it violates all of the decisions that the commission has issued on PSPS. You're not supposed to de-energize anybody who's fully served underground. That's the other sectionalization problem. The question is, you later segment 5. You
based on wind measurements taken on a transmission tower on a ridge line 5 miles away, because you have not segregated the populated area served by Bootlegger Segment 5 from the portion of Bootlegger Segment 5 that goes way, way out to Mill Creek. And we have asked for 6 years now to have that sectionalized, and it's still not sectionalized. So I would like to know when you're going to sectionalize at least those 2 areas. That's my first question.
Okay. So in terms of, let me just make sure I wrote it down correctly. First question is in terms of the sectionalization with the Acton substation. Can you respond to the first part of that question? And if you have the answer, if not, if someone can let me know who might be able to take the second question regarding plans to sectionalize on the bootlegger and wind speeds that we are reading on the transmission towers.
Yeah, let's see, I will attempt to, unfortunately, I won't be able to speak to any of these detailed individual segments. I just don't have that information in front of me. It's something we shouldn't be de-energizing. If we're de-energizing underground, it's typically because there's an overhead section that feeds it, or the source to that substation is lost. Those are typically the only times. I can't speak to a specific event or date. I don't have that information in front of me.
Kim, just to be sure, I want to make sure, just to be sure, when you say the second part of that, what does that mean, just for clarification?
Okay, such as the line that serves Acton substation, the sub-transmission and transmission lines that bring power to the substation, because they also traverse high fire risk area. I don't know to the history of the energization of those in front of me. I'm just saying that's what could have led to the energization of underground areas. Generous.
It's a 66 kV line, you never cut power on it during PSPS. It's never been cut. And if it has been cut, you did not report it in the PSPS posted report. So I do not believe that is the case. I can see how it can happen, in which case everybody can lose power, but that is not what's happened over the last, since 2019, 6 years, 7 years now.
Yeah, I can commit to a review of the Crown Meadows area and certainly providing that, and we can get back. That works.
Thank you. Would you email the ATC and Acton Town Council with your contact information? We will send you the Edison map showing that it's completely underground. And in our comments on those posts, PSPS report, we mapped where you need to sectionalize section 5 on the bootlegger.
I did, yeah, section 5 was broken into 2 segments. And unfortunately, I moved rather quickly through those slides to make sure that you had some time to ask for questions. We did segment 5 into 2 segments. It's now segment 5 and 11, I believe. And so,
can we pull that back up? Just so that we can have a visual to accompany, I think that might be helpful.
Sure. Okay, let's go back to it would be slide 24. This one. Oh, no. Okay. Go up. Right here. If this is the segment you're talking about, yes. This segment was broken into, was previously, I think all the yellow circuit and the brown were all one, and now it is broken into the brown circuit and the yellow segment, so the brown segment and the yellow segment.
That's great. So that was done after January, obviously, right?
I can't speak to that. I think so, I just don't know for a fact.
Okay, great, thank you. That's exactly where you need to break it. Now, my second question is...
Thank you.
I appreciate that, truly I do, thank you. Wind speeds and wind gusts measured at Edison transmission line towers substantially exceed Public Utility Commission design standards. Almost 80 miles an hour, but you never cut power on them. But you cut power on distribution lines down in the valley that don't experience winds that even exceed the threshold. So explain to us what the wind load is that you designed, particularly the tower south of Vincent substation, which is where the wind lines are really experience high wind. So what what the wind speeds or the windmill they've been designed for, and why you never cut power on transmission lines even though they substantially exceed PUC design standards.
Okay, thank you, Ken.
Yeah, I'll attempt to answer that as succinctly as possible. Some transmission and transmission are designed, the thresholds are, the baseline thresholds are typically set at the structural design rating of those towers, and those vary widely. However, the specific discounts that Tom mentioned that apply to distribution also apply, such as environmental factors, the FPI, how extreme the fire potential index is, circuit health, outstanding notifications, fire suppression availability, those discounts still apply. But because they vary widely, I wouldn't be able to speak to exactly what they are because of the various transmission construction types.
So will you share with the community what your thresholds are for those transmission towers?
When we do the energized transmissions, we do share them in the most of our report.
Without having to have them de-energized. The reason is this: in the Southbridge fire, right, that was caused by Edison 220 kV transmission line, it occurred because a connector that held the insulators off separated the insulators from the conductor failed. It was supposed to last 100 years. It didn't even last 2. And it rusted from the inside out, so the inspections never followed. That line was built in 1970. The lines we have here, some of them were built much older than that. And so we have concerns that, that Southbridge is just one line and one fire. We have almost 20 Southbridge lines, and some of them are a lot older than that. It makes much greater wind speeds. So when is Edison going to work with our community to tell us about what's going on with the transmission lines, what your thresholds are, so that we can feel safe and not be worried we're going to end up with an Eaton fire or a Saddle Ridge fire or some other fire caused by the transmission lines, not the distribution lines that are energized anymore.
Yeah. Okay. I will share, I believe the Saddle Ridge fire is still under investigation, and I'm not privy to that investigation. And because of those discount factors, thresholds can, the de-intermission thresholds of transmission can vary from event to event based on specific factors associated with that event.
Okay, well,
but I could, no,
the Public Utilities Commission did finish their analysis on the Saddle Ridge, and it was found with the cause, so I'm not going to send that to you. But that is the reason why we're so concerned about your transmission lines, especially the 80-mile an hour ones. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I just want to echo that it is, again, the reason why we also are very concerned the risk for fire and why the public safety power shutoffs have become such a big part of our prevention and safety efforts, and thank you for that. We're almost at time. I do want to make sure you've waited so patiently, ma'am. Thank you again for your patience. Go right ahead. No, thank you.
What I wanted to do was share with you 2 instances. We had a fall fall in our backyard. It was going spark. So on the call Edison, it was quite early, like before 11 p.m. tonight. So they said that they would come out and check the water goes away, we had no electricity.
Yes.
So this way we watch. We have animals. I want to be sure nothing else caught fire. They came about 2 hours later. Didn't seem a big deal, but they did take care of it, and I appreciate them coming at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock that day, where they got the water. It was found out that ravens, when it comes to their pregnancy years or months, they build a nest. And so that was the cause for that circumstance. And I got the phone number to call Edison because you were handing out before little cards that had the phone numbers for the emergency. So I gave it to that. I put it on the refrigerator. The next one took me a little longer. why not? Well, that power pole that's on fire is the one next to you, not next to me. I said, well, okay, you for calling me. I will take care of it, I said. So I went to the refrigerator, took out the number, and I called 2 or 3 times with Edison and Racing numbers. Nobody answered, so I figured they must be going for a break. It's very late at night, 1 o'clock in the morning. And then, still no answer. So I finally called 911. And I apologize to them for calling them. I told them, this is what I did. I called 2 times to Edison, the emergency number, and nobody's answering the phone. I hate to bother you, but the power line is still on fire. It's going only one direction. The flames are coming out to the left side. And there was no wind. But I didn't see any fire embers going down the ground. But I kept watch. I wasn't going to use water or anything. And so the 911 took care of it, and they didn't show up till after 1 hour later. Which was okay with me because the flames just went one direction, like they opening a gas stove and you have your flames going, it was the same thing. And so then they came, and then the fire department came much later on too. And they were coming. Our road, we live on North Crown Valley, right at the end where you have all the power lines. They're very tall and big, they look just like giants. And so, and then the gate opened and water hose all the way out of the gate, just in case. And then room for the fire department trucks to get in because and make the turn on the road. And they did take care of it, but I guess it was not something to be worried about. But I'm thinking now, that emergency line, the phone number that was given, doesn't work 24 hours, correct?
Let me see if something
Or should I be calling 911?
Well, you should always be calling 911 first. We absolutely recommend calling 911, so you did the right thing.
Right.
But I'm trying to see if Jennifer maybe knows if that line is 24 hours.
I would have to know which line you're calling to confirm. But I can definitely look into it.
And I,
We're on the big line, North Crown Valley, way there at the end of the mountain.
Yeah, but you're calling you're calling an emergency Edison number, so I want to make sure that we can answer that question.
So I read the rules and I said, okay, this is the number to call.
Our emergency lines are supposed to be 24 hours. If you wouldn't mind doing me a favor, because I just want to make sure that the line that you're calling is the right one. I'm going to give you our phone number, the emergency line number. If you can check that against what you have at home. If you want to send us a picture of what you have at home, that would be helpful. Our emergency line number is 800-611-1911. I'll repeat it, like 800-611-1911. And if you, there's a lot on this page, I understand. So that line is supposed to be 24, it's monitored 24/7, so I want to make sure, I'm going to go back to the team and provide this feedback, because if that's the phone number that you're calling, they should be answering. So thank you for, first and foremost, sharing it with us. And at the same time, I do just want to note for the benefit of the group that if you see an electrical hazard, it is important to leave the area immediately. Call 911 first. After you've called 911, then you call us, just to make sure that you have that handy. So call 911 first, then you call our emergency number, because if you're seeing a fire, we want to make sure those resources are getting to you as quickly as possible. And I don't know if the fire chief is still in the room, but if he has anything to add, I just want to make sure that we call on him as well.
He had a meeting to go to. Do you have his his contact information? Because he left the room. I do. I have it.
Oh, he did? Okay, great. So I think that I just wanted to make sure that he didn't have a different number, like on their side that they want you to call. We always recommend call 911 first,
Yes.
and then our emergency number. And I'm so glad just.
And that's just part of that's it. The operator of the 911 called the fire department.
I'm glad you're okay. I think that is, first and foremost. I'm glad you're okay. Thank goodness, because those are the types of situations that we're trying to prevent. Do I see one more person in line? Thank you again.
I haven't really, it's just a comment. I have no questions. I just want to let you know that the program that you have for a discount on small gas generators doesn't really help out here because a lot of us are seniors and you don't want us out in the dark putting gasoline into a hot generator. So I think you need to do a lot better. We're not getting any financial reimbursement from you guys when our power's out. You need to do a whole home generator backup system availability for people at a discount, especially disabled seniors. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, well, again.
Can I ask a quick question related to that? Our local businesses sometimes lose thousands of dollars worth of food and things when they lose power for several days. And once upon a time, they were supposed to be able to submit receipts to Edison and get paid back according to the Public Utilities Commission website. But every time they did that, they never got money back. So tell me how businesses can be made whole when they lost power for days. And then
Jennifer's. Yes, no, of course. Well, this will be our last question, and if you have any additional questions, maybe we can put the email back up, because I want to make sure you have a way to reach out to this team, wildfireoutreach@sce.com. Jennifer, can you answer her question on business reimbursement?
Yeah, so we have, on our website, there is a section where you can submit a claim. However, those claims, we do look into every claim that is submitted, and we generally are responsible for losses that occur due to negligence, and oftentimes we don't look at PSPS as one of our negligence. We do it for public safety.
So Jennifer, just to make sure I understand, so if there is a PSPS related expense, we would not reimburse that expense because it's not due to negligence?
In most cases, we will not reimburse that expense because it is not due to negligence, but in some cases it might be. It might be that we missed a notification, or it might be that there are other circumstances that could factor in, so we definitely look at each of the claims to make sure that we do our due diligence to evaluate each claim.
Okay. I hope that provides a little bit of clarity. Just generally speaking, my understanding, we're responsible for losses that occur due to our negligence, as Jennifer just said. However, it sounds like there's a notification element. If you missed a notification, that might be a reason why we were negligent. If we delivered that notification, if I hear you correctly, Jennifer, then it sounds like that would have been something that we notified and therefore are not going to reimburse for. I just want to make sure that we clarify, because that's a question we get from communities pretty regularly.
Correct.
Okay. Well, thank you again for your questions and for your time. I just want to, thank you for taking time to be there in person. Our team, I hope, answered some of the questions. I know we have some follow-up, so I do want to just reinforce if we can put our email back up on the screen. Please let us know if we have an outstanding question. Send us your contact information. I would love to make sure the team can follow up with those pieces. And again, we acknowledge that PSPS outages have such a significant impact in Acton, and we appreciate the opportunity to continue to work with you all. As we know, these moments are really tough. We recognize challenges and hardships that they cause on each member of the community, and we're committed to supporting you as we work through some of these difficult times and some of the questions. Your resilience and cooperation through this, again, are really helpful. We just want to ensure your safety. So with that said, thank you again for joining us. Thank you to the fire chief, and have a great day.